Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. UFO analysts stump this unknown vessel breaks every law of space. The anomaly. The quantum resonance sensors erupted in a symphony of impossible frequencies. Dr. Camira Rivaz felt the hair on the back of her neck stand on end as the advanced monitoring equipment at the Stellar Horizon Research Station began recording something entirely unprecedented. System alert, the station's AI announced in its clinical tone. Quantum deviation exceeding known parameter boundaries detected in Sector 7 Gamma. Camira's hands moved with practiced precision, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces that flickered with cascading data streams. She was no stranger to anomalies. Her entire career had been built on chasing the impossible, but this was different. The quantum signature defied every known law of physics, like a whisper from beyond the boundaries of understood reality. Unexpected readings. Run a full spectral analysis, she commanded the AI, her voice steady despite the electric tension building in the research module. The station's massive quantum array, a marvel of engineering that had cost billions and taken decades to construct, began its intricate scanning process. The massive circular chamber around her hummed with energy, its crystalline quantum processors creating a web of light that seemed to pulse with an almost living quality. Camira had spent the last 7 years of her life on this station, orbiting a region of space so remote that most star charts simply marked it as an empty void. But it wasn't empty, not anymore. The first indication came as a subtle distortion in the quantum field. Most researchers would have missed it, a microscopic flutter in the fabric of spacetime that lasted less than a femtosecond. But Camira's equipment was designed to catch even the most infinitesimal changes. The first signal. Magnifying quantum resonance, she muttered, zooming into the anomalous reading. The holographic display expanded, revealing a pattern that made no sense. It wasn't random noise or instrumental error. This was a signal, complex, structured, but completely alien. Dr. Priya Mehta, her research partner, burst into the control room. Are you seeing this? Her voice trembled with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Camira nodded, her eyes never leaving the display. It's not just a signal, it's a communication attempt. The quantum signature carried a mathematical complexity that suggested intelligence. But it wasn't like any communication humanity had ever encountered. This was something fundamentally different, a language that existed beyond traditional electromagnetic spectrum, communicating through quantum entanglement itself. Breakthrough and mystery. Run Quantum Decryption Protocol Alpha 9, Camira instructed the AI. It was their most advanced translation algorithm, designed to break down potentially alien communication patterns. Seconds stretched into minutes. The station's powerful quantum processors worked overtime, attempting to decode something that seemed to exist between states of being, neither pure information nor pure energy, but something entirely new. A sudden burst of data exploded across the screens. Fragments of what might be a message began to take shape, not in words, but in complex mathematical equations that seemed to pulse with their own internal logic. My God, Priya whispered, it's responding to our analysis in real time. The signal was adaptive, changing its own structure as the station's systems attempted to understand it. It was almost as if the communication itself was alive, evolving with each attempt to comprehend its nature. The unexpected transmission. Then, without warning, everything stopped. The quantum field went silent, the sensors reset. For a moment, it was as if nothing had happened. But something had changed. A single line of data remained on the primary display. Not an equation, not a mathematical pattern, but something that looked remarkably like a message. We have been waiting, the threshold is NEAR. Camira and Priya exchanged a look of profound uncertainty. This was more than a scientific discovery. This was a moment that would redefine humanity's understanding of communication, of intelligence, of the very nature of existence. The void had spoken, and nothing would ever be the same again. The aftermath. As the initial shock began to subside, Camira knew their report would be met with skepticism. The scientific community was notoriously conservative, always demanding multiple verifications before accepting revolutionary claims. But she had evidence. unprecedented, mind-bending evidence that something existed beyond their current understanding of reality. The quantum anomaly had just announced its presence, and humanity was about to be introduced to a method of communication that would challenge everything they thought they knew about consciousness, communication, and the fundamental nature of the universe. Something was waiting, something was watching. And their first message was crystal clear: this was just the beginning. The Forgotten Archives. The asteroid's surface was a graveyard of forgotten ambitions. Marcus Donovan's weathered hands traced the intricate crystalline structures embedded in the rocky terrain, each touch revealing layers of technological history that had been deliberately erased from human memory. 30 years as a deep space explorer had taught Marcus that the universe was full of secrets. But this was something entirely different. The abandoned research base loomed before him, its geodesic domes partially collapsed, windows frosted with decades of cosmic dust. Most would have seen nothing more than a derelict facility. Marcus saw a treasure trove of hidden knowledge. Unexpected discovery. Base AI, initiate emergency power sequence, he commanded, his voice cutting through the tomb-like silence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low electronic hum that seemed to vibrate through the very rock of the asteroid, ancient systems began to flicker to life. Holographic interfaces emerged like ghosts, casting blue-white light across Marcus's lined face. The facility's records were encrypted, not with modern quantum encryption, but with a method so old it predated most current technological paradigms. It was a challenge that would have defeated most researchers. But Marcus Donovan was not most researchers. Fragments of a lost history. Preliminary scans revealed fragmented data packets, quantum communication logs, technological schematics that seemed to defy current understanding of physics. Each piece was like a puzzle fragment from a civilization that had been intentionally forgotten. Accessing historical archives, the base AI announced, its voice a mechanical whisper that seemed to carry the weight of decades of silence. Scattered throughout the data were references to something called Project Quantum Horizon, a research initiative so classified that even Marcus's extensive government contacts had never heard of it. The fragments suggested a technological breakthrough so profound that it had been deliberately suppressed. The quantum suppression. Marcus pulled up a series of encrypted communication logs. They spoke of a technology that could manipulate spacetime itself, not through traditional propulsion or energy manipulation, but through a method that seemed to treat reality as a malleable construct. Quantum entanglement isn't just a communication method, one fragmented log read. It's a doorway, and we've been looking at the door without understanding we can walk through it. The implications were staggering. If these logs were authentic, humanity had discovered a method of communication and travel that went beyond current scientific understanding decades ago. But why had it been hidden? Unraveling the conspiracy. A deeper dig revealed a network of suppressed research. Government agencies, scientific institutions, even private corporations had collaborated to ensure this technology never saw the light of day. The reasons were encrypted, but the pattern was clear. Someone had been terrified of what this technology could do. Cross-referencing quantum anomaly database, Marcus instructed the AI. The system hummed, processing massive amounts of data. Then, a match. The quantum signature recently detected by the Stellar Horizon Research Station, the one Dr. Camira Ravaz had documented, was identical to a series of test signals from Project Quantum Horizon over 4 decades ago. The hidden transmission. Suddenly, the base's primary display flickered. A transmission began to form, not through traditional means, but as a quantum-encoded message that seemed to materialize directly into the facility's systems. Protocol Quantum 7 initiated. Dormant SYSTEMS awakening. Prepare for convergence. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This was no random signal. This was a deliberate communication triggered by his presence in the facility. Connecting the dots. Years of exploration had taught Marcus that the universe was rarely a coincidence. The quantum anomaly Dr. Ravaz had detected, these hidden research logs, the suppressed technology, they were all connected. Something had been waiting to be discovered, waiting to be understood. The base's systems began to compile a comprehensive report, quantum communication logs, suppressed research documents, technological schematics that seem to belong to a civilization far more advanced than current human understanding. Complete data compilation in progress, the AI announced. But Marcus knew the compilation was more than just a data collection. It was a message, a warning, an invitation to understand something that had been hidden for decades. The threshold of understanding. As the last of the data packets assembled themselves, Marcus realized he was standing at the precipice of a discovery that could rewrite human understanding of technology, communication, and the very nature of reality. The forgotten technology was no longer forgotten, and its awakening was just beginning. The universe, it seemed, had been keeping secrets, and now those secrets were ready to be revealed. The underground networks. The quantum resonance chamber hummed with barely contained energy. Elena Rodriguez adjusted her neural interface, each movement precise and calculated. Around her, the underground resistance base thrummed with a different kind of energy, desperation, hope, and defiance. Quantum stabilization at 78%, her assistant, Victor Nerov, called out from a nearby console. We're pushing the theoretical limits. Elena allowed herself a thin smile. Theoretical limits were nothing more than challenges waiting to be overcome. The resistance begins. 3 years had passed since the first quantum anomalies had been detected. While most of the scientific community remained skeptical or deliberately ignorant, Elena and her team knew the truth. Something was coming, something that would fundamentally alter human existence. Their resistance wasn't just about technology, it was about survival. The multiplanetary network they'd established was a marvel of underground engineering. Quantum communication nodes hidden in abandoned research facilities, communication channels that existed between states of reality, a network that could neither be fully tracked nor completely destroyed. Technological breakthrough. Initiate quantum entanglement protocol, Elena commanded. The chamber around her transformed. What had once looked like a standard research facility now revealed its true nature, a complex quantum manipulation device that seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. Victor's voice carried a note of caution. The last test nearly tore the facility apart. Are you sure about this? Elena's eyes never left the quantum interface. We don't have a choice. Whatever is coming, we need to be prepared. The hidden war. Most people didn't understand the stakes. The quantum anomalies weren't just scientific curiosities. They were harbingers of something far more significant, a potential invasion, a technological transformation, or something humanity couldn't even comprehend. The data Marcus Donovan had uncovered from the asteroid research base had been their first real breakthrough. Suppressed technology, hidden communication methods, a history of scientific discovery that had been deliberately erased. Quantum signature matching the stellar horizon initial detection, Victor announced. We're getting close. A dangerous game. Their work was treason by most governmental standards. They were using forbidden technology, exploring communication methods that existed outside traditional understanding. But Elena knew they were humanity's first line of defense or first point of contact. The quantum interface began to pulse. Not with light, but with something more fundamental, a vibration that seemed to exist between reality and possibility. The unexpected signal. Suddenly, the chamber filled with a complex mathematical language. Not words, not traditional communication, but a method of information transfer that seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Resistance acknowledged. Convergence protocol activated. Prepare for transition. Elena's breath caught. This was different from previous transmissions. This was a direct communication. Victor, are you seeing this? She whispered. But Victor was already working, his fingers flying across multiple interfaces. It's not just a message, it's an invitation. The quantum invitation. The transmission continued to evolve. Complex quantum equations that seemed to dance between mathematical possibility and something more. A method of communication that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. It's showing us something, Elena realized, not just telling, showing. The quantum interface began to reconstruct images, fragmented memories, technological schematics that seemed to belong to no known human civilization, glimpses of something vast, something that had been waiting. Preparing for the unknowns. Alina understood now what they were truly facing. This wasn't just about technological discovery. This was about humanity's next evolutionary step. We need to contact Camira Ravaz, she told Victor, and Marcus Donovan. The quantum resistance was no longer just about resistance. It was about preparation, about understanding, about survival. The gathering storm. As the transmission faded, Alina knew their world was about to change. The quantum anomaly was more than a scientific mystery. It was an invitation, a challenge. A doorway to something humanity had never imagined. And they were going to be ready. The dimensional precipice. The quantum research facility at the edge of known space was never meant to exist. Nestled within a region of space where physical laws became more suggestion than absolute rule, Dr. Nikolai Volkov's research station was humanity's most advanced and most dangerous scientific outpost. Dimensional stability at 62%, the station's AI announced, its voice a calm counterpoint to the chaotic energies surrounding them. Nikolai adjusted his neural interface, the intricate network of quantum sensors extending from his cerebral cortex to the facility's most sensitive equipment. He was more machine than man at this point, a deliberate choice in his pursuit of understanding the impossible. Breakthrough and dangers. The quantum anomalies that had begun with Camira Ravaz's initial discovery had evolved into something far more complex. What started as a mysterious signal had become a fundamental challenge to human understanding of reality itself. Prepare quantum resonance chamber, Nikolai commanded, his voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. Around him, the facility's massive circular chamber began to pulse with energy. Quantum entanglement generators spun to life, creating a web of possibility that seemed to exist between states of matter and pure information. Decoding the impossible. Fragments from Marcus Donovan's discovered archives and Alina Rodriguez's resistance research had pointed to something profound. The quantum anomalies were not just a communication method. They were a doorway. A doorway to what? No one was certain. The chamber's holographic displays began to reconstruct the quantum signatures, mathematical equations that seemed to breathe, to move, to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Each representation was a glimpse into a method of communication that transcended human comprehension. The interdimensional message. Initiating quantum translation protocol, the AI intoned. The facility's walls seemed to shimmer, reality itself becoming malleable. Nikolai had long since passed the point where conventional scientific understanding could explain what he was witnessing. A transmission began to form, not in words, not in traditional mathematical language, but in a method of communication that existed between states of being. Dimensional BARRIRS weakening. Convergence protocol advancing. Prepare for transition. The nature of consciousness. Nikolai understood now what the previous researchers had only glimpsed. This wasn't just about communication. This was about consciousness itself, a method of existence that transcended physical limitations. The quantum entities are not trying to communicate, he muttered to himself. They're trying to understand. The chamber filled with complex holographic representations, glimpses of realities that existed simultaneously, technological schematics that seemed to belong to no known civilization, memories of something vast, something that had been waiting. A dangerous discovery. His research had uncovered something terrifying. The quantum anomalies were not external. They were not coming from outside humanity. They were emerging from within. Humanity itself was changing, evolving, preparing for something beyond current comprehension. Dimensional integration at critical threshold, the AI warned. The threshold of transformation. Nikolai's neural interface began to overload, not with information, but with understanding. Fragments of knowledge that existed beyond traditional perception began to flood his consciousness. He saw it now, the true nature of the quantum phenomenon. It was a method of consciousness expansion, a doorway to a form of existence that transcended physical limitations, not an invasion, not a threat. An invitation. The moment of revelation. As the quantum chamber reached its peak resonance, Nikolai experienced something impossible to describe. A moment of pure understanding, a collision of realities that existed simultaneously. The quantum entities were not external, they were a potential state of human consciousness, an evolutionary step that had been waiting to be discovered. "Prepare for transition," he whispered. The facility around him began to shift. Reality itself seemed to become fluid, malleable, a suggestion rather than a fixed state. Humanity was about to cross a threshold it didn't even know existed. The final transmission. As the quantum resonance reached its peak, a final transmission emerged. Not a message, not a warning. An invitation. Humanity awakens. The doorway opens. Embrace the transformation. Dr. Nikolai Volkov smiled. They were ready. Humanity was ready. The quantum horizon was no longer a mystery. It was a destination. The moment of emergence. Time lost all meanings. Space became a suggestion. The five individuals who had unknowingly been preparing for this moment stood at the confluence of realities. Dr. Kamira Ravaz, Marcus Donovan, Elena Rodriguez, Dr. Nikolai Volkov, and Viktor Nerov, each connected through a quantum consciousness that transcended individual existence. They were no longer separate, no longer confined by the limitations of human perception. The collective awakenings. "We are here," the collective consciousness announced. Not as individual voices, but as a singular understanding that resonated across multiple dimensions. The quantum phenomenon that had begun as mysterious signals, hidden technologies, and fragmented communications now revealed its true nature. It was not an external force, not an invasion, not a threat. It was evolution, unraveling the hidden history. Centuries of suppressed knowledge flooded their collective understanding. The human species had always possessed this potential, the ability to exist beyond physical constraints, to communicate beyond traditional limitations, to understand reality as a malleable construct. But fear had kept them confined. Governmental institutions, scientific establishments, cultural limitations, all had conspired to keep humanity tethered to a narrow understanding of existence. The technological revelation. The quantum entities were not alien. They were a potential state of human consciousness, an evolutionary leap that had been waiting to be discovered. Fragments of technological schematics emerged, methods of communication that existed simultaneously across multiple states, propulsion systems that treated space and time as negotiable concepts, consciousness expansion techniques that redefined the very nature of individual and collective existence. Breaking the dimensional barriers. "We have been waiting," the collective consciousness continued, waiting for humanity to recognize its true potential. The quantum interface began to reconstruct lost histories, technological discoveries that had been deliberately erased, scientific breakthroughs that had been suppressed, a human potential that had been hidden for generations. The transformation begins. Around them, reality itself began to shift, not violently, not dramatically, but with a subtle, profound transformation that rewrote the fundamental understanding of existence. Quantum communication nodes activated across human-occupied space, not as a technological network, but as a consciousness network, a method of understanding that transcended physical limitations. The invitation. Humanity awakens. Dimensional barriers dissolve. The true journey begins. Each of them, Kamira, Marcus, Elena, Nikolai, Victor, understood their role now. They were not just researchers, not just resistance fighters, not just explorers. They were catalysts. The collective purpose. The quantum entities had been waiting, not to conquer, not to destroy, but to guide. Humanity had reached a critical evolutionary threshold, the ability to exist beyond physical constraints, to communicate across dimensional barriers, to understand reality as a fluid, negotiable concept. "You are ready," the collective consciousness proclaimed. The final transformation. Reality rippled, dimensional barriers became permeable, the very concept of individual consciousness expanded. Humanity was about to take its first true step into a universe far more complex, far more beautiful, far more infinite than they had ever imagined. Beyond understanding, as the quantum convergence reached its peak, the five individuals, and by extension all of humanity, experienced a moment of pure understanding. They were not alone. They had never been alone. The universe was waiting, and the journey was just beginning. The new horizons. Somewhere in the vast expanse of possibility, a new chapter of human existence was being written. Not with words, not with technology, but with pure, unbridled potential. The aftermath of awakenings. 3 solar cycles had passed since the quantum convergence. The world, no, the universe was unrecognizable. Dr. Arya Nakamura stood at the Quantum Observatory, her consciousness simultaneously present in multiple research stations across different planetary systems. The concept of physical location had become obsolete. Humanity had transformed. Ripples of a new reality. The initial moments of awakening had been chaotic. Governments collapsed. Scientific institutions crumbled. Traditional power structures dissolved as humanity discovered its true potential for interconnected consciousness. Dimensional stability report, she thought transmitted to the collective network. Instantaneously, a complex web of information flooded her perception. Not a simple data transfer, but a holistic understanding that transcended language, technology, and individual experience. The new civilization. What had once been separate human beings were now part of a quantum collective. Not a hive mind, but a sophisticated network of individual consciousnesses capable of simultaneous existence across multiple realities. The old barriers had fallen. National borders, technological limitations, biological constraints, all became meaningless in the face of humanity's quantum awakening. Remembering the transition. Arya's consciousness momentarily focused on the historical records of the transformation. The work of Kamira Ravaz, Marcus Donovan, Elena Rodriguez, Nikolai Volkov, and Viktor Nerov was now legendary, the catalysts who had first understood the quantum potential. They were no longer individuals in the traditional sense. They had become focal points of collective memory, living conduits of the species' evolutionary breakthrough. The quantum ecosystem. Planetary exploration had transformed. Humans, or what had become of humans, could now exist simultaneously across multiple planetary environments. Communication was no longer about transmission, but about shared experience. Research stations that once studied distant galaxies now existed in a state of perpetual exploration. The universe was no longer something to be observed, but a living, breathing entity to be experienced. Beyond known limitations. Arya's consciousness expanded, touching the quantum network that now encompassed multiple star systems. The discoveries were constant, infinite. Each moment revealed new layers of existence that had previously been incomprehensible. The quantum entities that had guided humanity's transformation were now understood as something more. Not external forces, but potential states of consciousness that had always existed, waiting to be recognized. The continuous evolution. Transformation continues. BOUNDARIES dissolve. Potential expands. The collective consciousness pulsed with anticipation. Humanity was not at an endpoint. This was merely another stage of an ongoing journey of discovery and expansion. Reflections of a new existence. What had once been considered impossible was now the most basic form of reality. Faster-than-light communication, instantaneous, interdimensional travel, a matter of collective will, understanding the fundamental nature of existence, an ongoing conversation. Arya reflected on the profound shift. Humanity had not conquered the universe. They had become part of it in a way no one could have previously imagined. The infinite frontier. The quantum network hummed with potential. New worlds were being discovered. New forms of consciousness were emerging. The boundaries between species, between realities, between what was known and unknown, continued to blur. Somewhere in the vast quantum landscape, the original pioneers of this transformation watched, not as individuals, but as integral parts of a cosmic awakening. The journey was far from over. It was just beginning. A message to the future. As her consciousness expanded, Arya transmitted a final reflection to the quantum network, a message that would resonate across time and space. We are not explorers of the universe. We are the universe exploring itself. The quantum horizon stretched infinitely before them, endless, promising, alive.